"Jennifer, we've decided on family only for Thanksgiving this year. Find somewhere else to eat." The words glowed coldly on my phone screen, sent by my own mother just 2 days before the holiday. I stared at the message, heart pounding as the reality sank in. I was officially uninvited from Thanksgiving dinner. Not forgotten, not accidentally overlooked. Excluded deliberately. And where had my family chosen to celebrate their family-only gathering? At Bella's. The very restaurant I had built from the ground up. The 3-star Michelin jewel in my culinary empire. The irony was so sharp it almost made me laugh. My mother, who still thought of me as the dropout daughter who played with food trucks, had unknowingly reserved my private dining room for her perfect holiday dinner, without me. I looked out from my office window at the bustling kitchen below, where my staff was prepping for one of the busiest days of the year. The smell of fresh herbs and roasted garlic drifted upward. My chefs were sharpening knives, testing sauces, checking oven temps with the precision of surgeons. They knew they worked for one of the most successful restaurant groups in the city. My family, on the other hand, still thought I was barely scraping by. The sting wasn't just the exclusion, it was what it meant. That in their eyes, I wasn't real family. My siblings, Michael the lawyer and Ashley the nurse, represented the respectable paths my parents could brag about. Me? I was the odd one out. The daughter who chose a different road. To them, that was embarrassing. But here's the part they did not know. My food truck had grown into a multi-million-dollar empire with 7 restaurants and 2 catering companies. I employed more people than both my siblings combined. And this year, my family was about to find out exactly who they'd cut out of the picture, because I wasn't going to stay silent. No, this time I had a plan. Before we dive deeper, tell me, have you ever been underestimated by your own family? Comment below with your story, I'd love to hear it. And don't forget to hit subscribe and like this video so you don't miss the shocking turn this Thanksgiving tale is about to take. To my family, I was always the odd one out. Michael, the eldest, was the golden boy, a sharp-suited lawyer with a 6-figure income before he even turned 30. Ashley, the youngest, was the perfect homemaker, a nurse with 2 kids and the kind of stable, suburban life my parents could parade proudly at dinner parties. And then there was me, Jennifer, the dropout, the disappointment. The one who left law school behind to chase a pipe dream of cooking out of a rusty food truck. I can still hear my mother's voice, dismissive but coated in fake concern. "Sweetheart, cooking is fine as a hobby, but when will you get a real career?" Every holiday, the same comments circled the table. I learned to swallow my frustration with every bite of dry turkey. What they didn't see, what they never cared to see, was the fire behind my choices. That truck wasn't just about food. It was about creating something of my own. I worked double shifts, chopped vegetables until my hands blistered, and served late-night crowds in the freezing rain. Customers came back, not because I was the cheapest option, but because my food had heart. And slowly, that truck became 2. 2 became 5. Then came the first restaurant, Bella's, an upscale Italian concept that critics laughed at in the beginning, until the first Michelin star silenced them, then the second, then the third. My parents never asked. They never visited. Even when Bella's started appearing in magazines, they assumed I was just helping in the kitchen somewhere, not running the kitchen. It was easier for them to imagine me as the family misfit than to face the possibility that I had surpassed their expectations entirely. But their ignorance gave me power. The less they knew, the more I could build without interference. Thompson Culinary Holdings grew into a $12 million empire while they kept treating me like the family embarrassment. And now they were about to walk into Bella's, my restaurant, believing it was simply an elegant venue to impress Uncle Robert. They had no idea they'd be dining inside the very empire they'd dismissed for years. What they thought was their victory lap was about to become my stage. It was almost too perfect. I had just finished reviewing the week's financial reports when my phone buzzed. Mom's name flashed on the screen. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. Her voice was frantic, almost trembling. "Jennifer, something terrible has happened." I leaned back in my chair, savoring the moment. "What's wrong, Mom?" "The restaurant canceled our Thanksgiving reservation. 2 days before Thanksgiving. Can you imagine? We had everything planned. Your Uncle Robert's flying in, Your cousins are driving all the way from Phoenix, and now it's ruined. I made sure to sound sympathetic. Oh no, that's awful. Which restaurant? Bella's, she cried. That 3-star Italian place downtown. We had the private dining room, the wine pairings, everything. They just called and said there was some scheduling conflict. Jennifer, do you know anyone who could help us? You work in restaurants, don't you? I nearly laughed. The irony was so sharp it almost cut. The woman who had uninvited me from Thanksgiving was now begging me to save her perfect little holiday. But I kept my voice calm, measured. I might know a few people in the industry. What kind of place are you looking for? Something elegant, she said quickly. We wanted to impress Uncle Robert. You know how he brags about his kids. Lawyers, doctors, all of that. We just wanted to show him we're doing well too. Bella's was perfect. There it was. Not about family, not about love. It was about image. Always about image. Mom, I asked softly, when you decided on family-only Thanksgiving, did you ever stop to think what that meant for me? She hesitated. Sweetheart, we just thought you'd be too busy. We didn't want to burden you. I let the silence stretch. She scrambled to fill it. Besides, Jennifer, you know how it is. With your situation. It might have been awkward for Uncle Robert. My chest tightened. My situation. That's what she called it. The empire I'd built from nothing was still, in her eyes, an embarrassment. Don't worry, Mom, I finally said. I'll see what I can do. When I hung up, my reflection in the darkened office window stared back with a smirk I couldn't hold back anymore. She had no idea she'd just given me the perfect stage. By the time I hung up the phone, my plan was already forming. Mom thought she was calling in a favor. She had no idea she was handing me the perfect opportunity to show the entire family exactly who I'd become. For years, I'd swallowed their comments, their dismissive tones, their backhanded sympathy. But now I held all the cards. I called Marcus, my general manager at Bella's. His voice was steady as always. Jennifer, your mom's called 3 times already. She's desperate. She asked if we could find her another restaurant. Any restaurant. But you know Thanksgiving. We're fully booked across the city. Good, I said. That's exactly how I want it. He chuckled. You sound like you're up to something. I am, I replied. Here's what we're going to do. Call her back. Tell her there's one possible solution. The reservation can be reinstated, but only if the party grows to 13. Marcus paused, then let out a low whistle. 13, meaning you. Exactly. And when she asks who made that rule, you tell her it's the owner's condition. She doesn't need to know the owner is her daughter. Not yet. Marcus laughed softly. Jennifer, this is going to be one for the books. Trust me, I said. It's time they learn who they've really been underestimating. That night, my phone rang again. Mom's voice was weary, her usual commanding tone softened by panic. Jennifer, Bella's just called. They said they might reinstate our reservation, but only if we agree to add one more person. Do you know who that could be? We only invited family. I let the silence hang until I finally said, that extra person would be me. The silence on her end was deafening. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. You? She said at last. But Jennifer? Mom, that's the condition. Either I'm at the table, or you'll be scrambling for a chain restaurant buffet with Uncle Robert watching. Her breath caught. For the first time in years, I had the upper hand. Fine, she whispered. You can come. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. Step 1 was complete. The table was set, and the trap was ready to spring. Thanksgiving afternoon arrived crisp and cold, the kind of air that bites at your cheeks and makes your breath swirl like smoke. As I stepped out of the car in front of Bella's, my heels clicked against the polished stone walkway. The restaurant glowed warmly from inside, chandeliers spilling golden light through the tall windows. This was my house, my empire, and today my family was about to see it for what it really was. I paused at the entrance, heart steady, pulse deliberate. For 18 years they had dismissed me, Today, I would let them choke on their own assumptions. Inside, the hostess greeted me with a smile that carried just a hint of knowing. "Welcome, Miss Thompson. Your family is already seated in the private dining room." "Thank you," I said, smoothing my navy dress, not extravagant, but elegant in its simplicity. I wanted the moment to come from my words, not flashy clothes. When I walked into the private room, conversation faltered. 12 pairs of eyes landed on me, surprise etched across their faces. My sister Ashley's fork hovered in midair. My brother Michael leaned back, brows furrowed. And Mom's lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes darting like she wasn't sure whether to be angry or relieved. "You made it," Mom said, her voice strained, too sweet. "We weren't expecting you." "Apparently the owner insisted," I replied evenly, slipping into the empty seat at the end of the table. My words hung in the air like smoke no one wanted to inhale. Michael chuckled under his breath. "Figures. Jennifer knows someone in the kitchen, probably begged for a seat." I let it slide. Not yet. Timing was everything. The meal began, dishes arriving one by one with flawless presentation. Roasted turkey glistening under herbs, truffle-infused mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce like a jewel on white porcelain. The family buzzed with small talk, carefully avoiding the elephant in the room. Why I was there at all? Then, halfway through dinner, the door opened. David Morrison, Bella's general manager, stepped in with his usual composed smile. "Miss Thompson," he said warmly, nodding in my direction. "Would you like me to bring the ownership reports to your office on Monday, or would you prefer to take them home tonight?" The clatter of silverware filled the silence. Michael's eyes widened. Ashley's mouth fell open. Mom went pale, gripping her wine glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. I met David's gaze calmly. "Monday at the office is perfect. Thank you." He smiled, bowed slightly to the table, and left as quietly as he had entered. The silence that followed was electric. Ashley finally whispered, "Wait. Ownership reports? Jennifer, what do you—" I leaned back in my chair, let them stew in the confusion for a beat, then said softly, "Didn't Mom tell you? I own Bella's, and 6 more restaurants just like it." The room erupted, forks dropped, questions fired, disbelief tangled with guilt. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. I was undeniable. The room erupted like a storm breaking over calm waters. Michael slammed his fork down. "Wait, you're telling me you own Bella's? This Bella's? The one with 3 Michelin stars?" His voice cracked with disbelief, dripping with condescension even as his eyes betrayed panic. "Yes," I said simply, my tone calm, deliberate. "This is mine. Has been for 3 years now." Ashley blinked rapidly, her cheeks flushed. "But Mom said you were still doing food trucks, that you were just scraping by working nights." I turned to Mom, who sat frozen, her wine glass trembling in her hand. "Interesting," I said softly. "That's the story you've been telling everyone?" Mom swallowed hard, her face reddening. "Jennifer, I didn't mean—" "You didn't mean to what? Embarrass me? Or admit that you had no idea what I've been building because you never bothered to ask?" The silence was deafening, the kind that presses against your chest. Even the clinking from the kitchen outside seemed to fade, leaving only the weight of my words. Michael leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "If you're really the owner, prove it. Anyone can say they own a restaurant. Show us something." Before I could respond, David re-entered the room carrying a bottle of rare vintage wine. "Miss Thompson, as requested, we've decanted the Chateau Margaux from the reserve cellar. Would you like me to present it to your family now or after dessert?" I didn't even look at the label. "Now is fine. Thank you, David." His eyes flicked respectfully toward me before leaving again. Michael's mouth opened, then closed. For once, the genius lawyer had nothing to say. Ashley whispered, "Oh my God, you really do own this place." Uncle Robert, who'd been quietly watching, finally spoke. "Jennifer, this is remarkable. How long have you been running this empire?" 8 years, I replied. "I started with 1 food truck. Built it, expanded it, reinvested everything. Now, Thompson Culinary Holdings manages 7 restaurants and 2 catering companies. Over 200 employees depend on me. The words hit the table like a thunderclap. Ashley's eyes welled with tears. I didn't know. I thought... You thought I was the family disappointment, I finished for her. Her silence confirmed it. Mom finally spoke, voice cracking. Jennifer, I'm sorry. I should have been proud of you. I should have asked more, listened more. I was wrong. I looked at her for a long moment, my heart pounding. Her apology sounded sincere, but was it because she finally saw me, or because she saw my success? And that was the question that would decide everything. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch. The weight of their stares pressed down on me, equal parts curiosity, shame, and disbelief. For the first time in my life, they were waiting for my words, not dismissing them. Mom, I began slowly, folding my napkin on the table. You said you're sorry, but do you even know what you're apologizing for? Her eyes darted, glistening under the chandelier. For excluding you. For not recognizing your accomplishments. I shook my head. It's not just that. You made me feel like I wasn't family anymore. Like my worth was measured by who I married, the job title I had, or whether Uncle Robert would approve of me. Michael scoffed, shifting in his seat. Oh, come on. Nobody meant it that way. You're being dramatic. I locked eyes with him, my voice cutting sharp. No, Michael. You laughed when Mom called me the family disappointment. Ashley agreed. And the truth is, you all enjoyed the image of me as the underachiever. It made your lives look shinier by comparison. Ashley's lips trembled. That's not true. It is, I said flatly. And tonight, I'm done pretending otherwise. If you want me in this family, there are conditions. The room froze. Even the children at the far end of the table stopped their fidgeting, sensing the tension in the air. Conditions? Mom whispered. Yes, I said firmly, my heartbeat steady now. First, you will stop introducing me as the one who plays around with food. You'll tell the truth. I built a company from nothing into a multi-million-dollar business. Mom nodded quickly, desperate. Of course. Second, you will never again exclude me from family gatherings to protect some image. If you're ashamed of me, that's your problem. But I will no longer beg for a seat at the table. Michael muttered. Bit harsh, don't you think? Harsh? I snapped, my voice rising. Do you know what it feels like to get a text saying you not real family? To know your own mother chose appearances over you? Harsh doesn't begin to cover it. Michael leaned back, chastened. And third, I continued, my voice steady, from now on, when Uncle Robert or anyone else asks about me, you don't have to puff me up because of my net worth. You talk about me, the woman who worked holidays, slept 4 hours a night, and bled to build this empire, not just the number in the bank. Mom's tears spilled. Jennifer, I promise. All of it. I'll tell the truth. I'll never exclude you again. She broke down, clutching her napkin. I just want my daughter back. For a moment, I almost softened, but then I caught Michael's tight jaw, his resentment, and Ashley's guilty avoidance. Not all of them were ready to change, and that's when I realized the conditions weren't just rules, they were a test. Who in this family wanted me for who I was? And who only wanted the shine of my success? The entrees arrived on silver trays, carried by my staff with precision and elegance. Perfectly seared filet mignon, roasted turkey roulade, truffle mashed potatoes, and sides plated like artwork. The aroma of rosemary and garlic drifted across the room, and I saw my mother inhale deeply, her shoulders softening as if the food itself might patch the hole she dug. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that tonight's menu had been crafted by me personally. Every dish on that table bore my fingerprint, recipes I'd developed over years of trial, error, and sleepless nights in hot kitchens. This wasn't just dinner, it was a performance. Wow, Uncle Robert said, lifting his fork. This is incredible. Jennifer, you really found us a gem. Mom glanced at me nervously, her eyes flicking toward him, as if to say, not yet, please. She wasn't ready for the reveal, but I was. I stood slowly, my chair scraping softly against the hardwood. All eyes turned toward me as I lifted my glass of wine. To family, I said smoothly. And to truth. Michael smirked, swirling his own drink. Is this going to be another lecture? No, I said, my voice steady. It's going to be a story. I let the silence hang, forcing their attention. The chandeliers cast a warm glow over their expectant faces. Forks paused midair. 8 years ago, I began. I dropped out of law school with nothing but a food truck and a dream. Everyone thought I was crazy. Some even thought I was embarrassing the family. I looked directly at Mom, who lowered her gaze. But that little food truck became 2. 2 became 5. 5 became a company. And now... I gestured toward the room, the table, the staff moving like a symphony in the background. Now it's this. The table buzzed with confusion. Ashley frowned. Wait, what do you mean this? I mean, I said, my tone sharpening, that while you all thought I was chasing some silly hobby, I was building an empire. Thompson Culinary Holdings, 7 restaurants, 2 catering companies, over 200 employees, and this... I motioned around us. Bella's is my flagship. The silence was deafening. Uncle Robert's fork clattered to his plate. You own this place? Yes, I said calmly, savoring the shock on their faces. So when Mom decided Thanksgiving was family only and booked this dining room without inviting me, I paused, sipping my wine. She unknowingly booked it with me. Mom gasped audibly, covering her mouth. Michael's smirk vanished, replaced by a clenched jaw. Ashley's cheeks flushed crimson, and then I twisted the knife. Oh, and one more thing. When Marcus called to cancel the reservation, who do you think gave the final approval? That's right, me. I could have left you scrambling, humiliated in front of Uncle Robert. But instead, I let you sit here and enjoy what you thought was your perfect evening. I leaned in, lowering my voice so they had to lean toward me. Except it isn't yours. It's mine. Every bite, every detail, every success you dismissed now owns this moment. The table was frozen in place, like a portrait of guilt, envy, and stunned realization. But deep down, I wasn't done yet, because the dinner shift had just begun. The silence that followed my revelation was thick, like the air before a thunderstorm. Forks lay abandoned, wine glasses untouched. My mother's face had gone pale, her hands trembling slightly against the linen tablecloth. Then Uncle Robert cleared his throat. Well, this changes things, doesn't it? His voice was sharp, not with judgment toward me, but toward my mother. Mom tried to recover, forcing a weak smile. Jennifer, I didn't know. If you had known, I cut in, my tone icy but calm, would you have treated me differently, invited me, been proud? Her silence was louder than any answer. That's when David Morrison, the club manager, reappeared with impeccable timing. Miss Thompson, he said with professional courtesy, everything is running smoothly. The kitchen is ready for dessert when your family is finished. The words Miss Thompson rang out like a hammer on steel. My mother flinched. My brother Michael froze. Ashley's wine glass trembled in her hand. The staff knew me, not as a guest, but as their boss. I smiled faintly. Thank you, David. Let's proceed as planned. The moment had shifted. Everyone in that dining room now understood that this wasn't just my restaurant. It was my stage. As the staff began serving delicate plates of pumpkin brulee and spiced pear tarts, I stood once again, this time addressing not just my family, but the entire room. Other guests in the dining hall had already started whispering, sensing drama at our table, and I intended to let them see the truth. For years, I said, my voice carrying just enough for nearby tables to hear, I was told that my choices were embarrassing, that I wasn't successful, that I didn't belong at tables like this. I paused, scanning my family's faces, then let my gaze sweep across the curious onlookers. But here is the truth. Success doesn't come from fitting into someone else's mold. It comes from building something of your own, brick by brick, plate by plate. A murmur rippled through the room. Some nodded, others leaned in closer. My family squirmed under the spotlight, their private humiliation becoming public spectacle. Michael tried to interrupt. "Jennifer, this isn't the time." "Oh, it's exactly the time," I shot back. "Because for years you laughed at me, dismissed me, and now you're sitting in my restaurant, eating food from my kitchen, served by staff who answer to me. So yes, this is the time. Because I want you to understand. What you dismissed as failure became the very thing you can live without tonight." The room erupted in quiet applause. Not thunderous, but enough. Enough to make my family sink lower in their seats. Enough to make my mother's eyes glisten with tears. Enough to prove that the lesson was not just delivered, but received. And yet the real climax hadn't happened, because one final reveal was waiting. The dining room was hushed. The only sounds were the faint clink of silverware and the muffled hum of conversations that had turned into whispers, all circling back to our table. My family's faces told the story. Michael's jaw clenched in disbelief, Ashley avoiding my gaze, and my mother, hands trembling as though holding the weight of her own shame. I lifted my glass of deep red wine, the candlelight catching its surface. My voice was calm, but carried through the room. Tonight, I want to make a toast. Every pair of eyes at our table, and many from neighboring ones, locked on me. To family, I began, letting the word linger. The people who are supposed to stand by you, support you, and see your worth, even when the rest of the world doesn't. I paused, watching my mother's eyes drop. But sometimes family doesn't see you at all. Sometimes they look at you and see only what you aren't, instead of what you are. The sting was intentional. I continued, raising my glass higher. For years, I was told I was embarrassing, that I wasn't enough, that I didn't belong at tables like this. But here we are. And it turns out this table is mine. This restaurant is mine. The staff who served you tonight? Mine. And the empire you dismissed as a hobby now feeds more people than your pride ever could. The silence was so sharp it cut deeper than words. And so, my toast is simple. To underestimation. My lips curved into a faint, triumphant smile. Because when people underestimate you, they hand you the sweetest revenge. Success they'll never see coming. Cheers. I clinked my glass against my own and took a sip, letting the moment hang heavy in the air. Around the room, guests lifted their glasses in solidarity. A ripple of applause followed, subtle but undeniable. My family sat frozen, some ashamed, some furious, some finally respectful. My mother leaned toward me, voice barely above a whisper, thick with tears. "Jennifer, I'm sorry." I set my glass down gently, meeting her eyes. "I don't need your apology, Mom. I need your respect." And with that, dessert was served. Not just sweet on the tongue, but satisfying to the soul. That Thanksgiving became legend in my family. Not because of the food or the venue, but because it was the night they learned a truth they could never unlearn. The daughter they had once dismissed was the one holding the entire table together. And now, I want to hear from you. What's the most satisfying revenge or justice you've ever seen? Tell me in the comments below. And don't forget, if you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of shocking betrayals and unforgettable payback.